Venus retrograde, May 13th to June 25th. Part of an 8-year cycle. A good time to think about what was going on 8 years ago. Not just romantic relationships, but all of your agreements are up. So check this out. Hey, it's Sam, and I'm talking about the Venus retrograde cycle. As you see, it happens every 8 years. And here in 2020, this cycle refers back to the spring of 2012, which was the last time we had Venus retrograde in Libra, at the end of Libra. Now, the Venus retrograde cycle carves out this pentagram shape, and it occurs every 8 years within a couple degrees of the previous cycle, the previous 8-year position by a degree. So this year in 2020, the Venus retrograde cycle is happening also at the very end of Taurus, Sidereal Taurus, in the nakshatra of Mrigashira. Mrigashira is related to the deer head, and it shows this curious, playful quality of Taurus, and the part of us that is looking to explore our environment. This part of Taurus is the last section where the bull, or the cow, becomes curious about its environment beyond just its comfort zone with the other cows next to it, and looks to explore a little bit. And the symbol of the deer is a very good symbol of this animal, this quadruped animal that's a gentle, placid animal. It's not a carnivore, right? It's a grass eater, and it's calm and peaceful, but it's more curious. It's faster. It's more curious, like a deer, because this is where Taurus becomes Gemini. Again, this is how the nakshatras really work when you understand them. They're different portions of the sky. It's the same sky measured out, just with a different portionality. So the portion between Gemini and Taurus is shown by Mrigashira, the deer, right? And so you'll often see that, for example, people that have a lot of planets in Mrigashira will have a face like a deer. They'll maybe have eyes that look like a deer. Their eyes will be darting. They'll have an energy that's like a deer. If it's in the Taurus portion, it's more of the settled, calm part of the deer. If it's in the Gemini part, it's more of the searching, restless part. So here in 2020, Venus will be retrograde in Taurus from May 13th until June 25th. And this shows a time when we're going to be reflecting on our interpersonal relationships, the capacity to yield to another person, the quality of our compromises, the agreements that we've made, not just personal agreements in romantic relationships, although that's one that we certainly focus a lot of attention on, but also all kinds of agreements, business arrangements, with our friends. In all kinds of relationships, they all have the same quality or similar quality with each other, and this is going to be a big source of reflection here in 2020. We can look back into, again, like the summer of 2012 to see the last time that we had the retrograde cycle in Libra, and whatever cycle maybe started at that time or closed or what have you. I'll say my personal story here. This was actually right when my mother died, 2012, right at this time. She died right after Mother's Day. And it really, opened up a lot of my relationship with my mother, of course, because when your mother dies, then you revisit quite a bit of that, and how it's changed you, and how it's patterned you in relationships with other, like a romantic relationship, but also in all relationships with other people. And so, again, especially the expectations and the agreements and the, what I expected from other people and how I respond to, criticism or whatever it might be, a lot of that got opened up in 2012. Again, this sort of 8-year cycle. Now this is, again, because it's in the sign of Taurus, it's very much a very dignified placement, which means that it's in a place where Venus is well established. It's very solid, stable. And so it really delivers the goods, you might say. Now again, that's not always something that feels good to us. Sometimes it brings us something to take something else away. Like, for example, the way you would read this, like in my case, because Taurus is in the 12th house, because I have a Gemini rising, it actually took away something to show me something else, right? So this is how you would look at it. And it really showed my desire, capacity, ability to, again, like fight or justify myself. This was a big part of it, growing up feeling like, for example, accused of things or being misunderstood or having to, again, justify myself for approval, or again, have someone say, oh, you're this way, you did that to me. Going, no, I'm not, no, it's not, I'm this way, and this kind of like, you know what I mean? This kind of sort of craving approval or understanding. This 8-year cycle has been that sort of thing. And in fact, the last several years, again, this is how you would read this in context of an individual chart. For myself, because it's Gemini, the last several years since early 2017, when Saturn actually started to go through my 7th house, that's when I really just, when I actually realized very deeply this whole awareness of putting so much effort into trying to justify or explain myself, or have to put so much effort into like just trying to say, no, that's not what I meant, and it got very hard. In fact, it started to make me sick when feeling misunderstood and having to, again, explain yourself, justify yourself. It was like literally I would start to get sick. So again, to some extent, that 8-year cycle, which started in 2012, again, you have to look at cycles within cycles, but it was, so much of it was about that, how so many relationships, whether they're romantic ones or friendships or even like business partnerships or business interactions, revolved around, in some ways, maybe having to prove something or teach something or show something, and then how much wasted time and effort and energy in situations where I have to put so much time into explaining myself, justifying myself, and eventually just realizing I have to let that go. I have to let relationships go that require me to do that. And again, this is also Venus in the 12th house. What you let go of. What you let go of, right? So again, the mother passing was one part of it, but a lot of it made me revisit this tendency and this nature. Now that Venus has come back, it feels like it's so much a part of that now, is to surrender and let go and not have to vindicate, justify, or get into any sort of, proving anything. The other thing that happened within that transit in 2012, which was really big, is that's when I actually started my certification course with my school. Again, that transit was really transformative. Now, other things were happening. Again, at the time, it happened in 2012. Saturn was actually going over my moon. Saturn and Rahu were going over my moon in the 5th house. So there was a whole lot of other kinds of pressures going on. But that's actually what, at the same time, shortly after Venus had stopped going retrograde and started going forward again, that whole transit through Taurus, that's when I actually started my certification course in 2012. That's when I had the sudden revelation to just do it, to just teach it. That was actually on my birthday in 2012. It just popped into my head, hey, I'm going to do this. It wasn't even really a plan. It wasn't really even thought out. It sort of was, but it just happened very spontaneously. So that was after Venus had turned direct again. So this year in 2020, Venus entered Taurus in late March. It was like March 30th. And from like late March until early August, it's more than 4 months, Venus is in Taurus. So since late March, Venus has been in Taurus and has been showing us this, this nature of, how valued we feel, what our values are, how they are reflected in all of our relationships with partners, friends, like with myself, a lot of interactions also have to do with students and clients and whatnot. It's not just romantic partners or people that I interact with as friends, but it really shows the agreements and the compromises that you make and how, frankly, how good they are, how much they're aligned with your own values, how much they're not, how much you have to do with it. Because again, we have to understand also, it's very easy, particularly with Venus and relationships and all that, to get into, again, most of our projections come from that, right? And to think that, well, it's this way for me, like I even just said it, because I'm always, being accused of things I didn't do, or this or that, or whatever it might be that we, this is also just the way we see it. A lot of this is our own projection. When we misunderstood, we might project, oh, you don't understand me, and turn it into this whole big pattern that's from the past, right? And then, again, there's so much of that goes on. So this is really a time where we have to also introspect about what we're, frankly, projecting onto the other person and all other people. Because again, the relationships are like they're like a very magnified version of every relationship we have. We have to, be honest about that. And again, the romantic ones bring it out more because it's more concentrated, there's more on the line, there's more vulnerability and all that. But we do all of our relationships on some version of that. Our compromises, our buttons, and all like that. So this transit through Taurus, wherever it falls in your chart, is going to bring that out. And go back and look at the summer of 2012, the spring summer of 2012, to see what cycle was opened up then, what cycle of growth around your compromises and your agreements, how much your agreements are not only aligned with your values, but also are an extension of how much you value the other person. It's very easy to feel like, well, I'm not valued. Well, how much do you value the others? When the others don't do what you want, how much value do you give? Because that's going to come back as well. This is really the thing. More than looking at what others have done to us or whatever, the real growth is in what we have done more than anything else. Now, that doesn't mean we stay in any relationship that isn't good or whatever. It doesn't compel any action. It just means that nothing will change until we identify what we're doing. We can say the other one did it or this or that, but we're just going to take that same mentality into the next one unless we identify who we are. So this Venus retrograde beginning May 13th and to June 25th is definitely good for that sort of reflection and revisiting, retrograde, redoing that. And based on where this falls in your chart, it can bring a lot of benefit or stress or difficulty, but it often shakes things up and definitely reverses things and makes us reconsider how we've been in our agreements, and that includes all agreements. So I hope this was helpful.